Hi everybody, Craig from Arms and Armor. Today I thought we'd take a little different tact instead of looking at just one specific sword and talk a little bit about the need for some love of the single-handed sword. In today's marketplace and how people are using swords in HEMA and Western martial arts training, longsword is kind of king. It's the sword that almost everybody is after. It's the one they usually will buy first. Trainers, they're almost all longsword trainers being sold today. And it's one of those aspects of the history of the medieval sword and the reality of our economics today and how we look at things that in the medieval period, single-handed swords would have been much more common than long swords. They're much more functional on a day-to-day basis as far as wearing and taking care of and handling and finding and storing. They are much more common in the medieval period for being worn on a daily basis. Long swords were probably much more along the lines of when you were expecting combat, you had your long sword with you kind of thing, or you had your servants bringing you your long sword with you. Romeo and Juliet, the big street fight starts, and one of the fathers is yelling, "Bring me my longsword, bring me my longsword," from the house. It's opposed to what we were carrying on ourselves for self-defense at that period of time. And so we're going to look at some of the longsword or short we're going to look at some of the single-handed swords we have in the shop at the moment. Most of these are orders going out, a few of them are available, but we are just going to look at the variety of how these things could be seen in the historic period. We have our Viking training sword, very nice little single-handed sword designed for very effective combat in a Viking style of combat with moving in and out quickly, agility being a main factor in how it was used, using quick snapping cuts, all of those kind of things. It has a nice big fuller on it, elegant little sword, very simple, but it's designed to be an effective trainer today for a single-handed Viking style sword or Nordic sword. Simple, straight little guard, little teak cozy pommel and steel peened, and then a grip that is skived leather on the exterior of the wood. We have the Malpa, which we just took a look at in a previous blog post, so you can check that out. Nice little single-handed sword, very elegant, very effective for cutting and combat in armor or not. You can see the hilt there, very nice little hilt on it. Has a big riser in the center, which some people think looks strange, but is very comfortable to the hand. Kind of fits between the four fingers right in the center and makes it very tactily responsive as a sword in hand. The other kind of Italian single-hander are Fornovo. Long, thin blade, excellent thrusting sword, as well as doing pretty good with the cut. Very tight little grip on this sword. You can see the hilt here has that short straight guard, a wheel pommel, and this sword we did in response to some experiments I was doing at the time with grip size and structure and how hilts were constructed. And it really is designed to help with an attack where you're using the hand to bring that short edge around and a strike in ways like that. It really powers the sword off the back side of the hand here. This is an elegant little sword. It's got a kind of oxblood leather grip on it, peened construction again with a nut, sharp, pointy little sword. Very light, easy to wear on your hip if you're going out to a fair or something like that. Here we have our Henry V sword, kind of your classic medieval sword. Sword in the Stone, Prince Charming, all of those kind of iconic images come up with this sword especially. It's got a hubbed wheel. It's got some space in there that would be really good for putting in some enamel paint as a design or heraldry, that kind of thing. This sword really is a quick, agile sword in the hand, really moves well. The shorter length too makes it a really great sword for wearing in crowded areas like Renaissance fairs and such. but this sword is kind of an iconic medieval sword if there ever was one. Here we have a custom sword that we did up for someone, and they're coming to pick it up, but this has a kind of fancy fishtail style pommel. It's got a straight little guard similar to the Fornovo, and you can see peened on the top there, but the three-dimensional structure of that very large fishtail pommel brings the weight way back on this sword. You know, it's got a nice balance point, real in that area where you're going to have a good presence of the blade in your hand. You can see this one's pretty long. I'm not sure what the exact length on this is, but it's probably close to 32, 34 inches in that area. But again, that sharp tapering point, that could be Italian as well, that style of sword. Here we have our French medieval sword. This is more in that classic style like the Henry, with that very classic hubbed wheel, tall pommel nut on there. This one is blued finish, black oxide, and then a red grip with a impressed string pattern in that request of the customer. And you can see that this is a real big cutting style single-handed sword. Good for thrusting, but you can really maneuver this through some cutting materials if that is your objective. If you go back a blog or post back, you'll see me doing some tests on some foam with that particular sword. The other sword I have here is our knightly riding sword. This one in black in finish as well. This has a dark brown mottled grip on it. Very nice looking sword. Light in the hand, moves very quickly. This sword is kind of a unique piece in our collection in the sense that we've been making it for a long, long time, and when I have a bunch of swords on a table, oftentimes people will come and they'll look and try a bunch of them, and almost always it comes down to them deciding between this sword and another sword. Just because the feel of it is so good, it's often a sword people don't pick for aesthetics or one that they look at and say, yeah, that's the sword I want. But when they put this in their hand, a lot of times that's the sword they decide on if they have it in their hand at the time. And then last, we have this elegant little single-hander. This might be up on the website soon. It's got a little hollow ground blade on it, a little bit shorter than some of the swords here, but extremely light in the hand. It's got a big hexagonal pommel, has a black leather grip with several risers in it for a tactile reference for the hand, straight fin guard, really a nice little sword, really moves quickly in the hand. Balance point, cog is right about there. So it's a really elegant little sword, and you can see that a small single-handed sword like this are very convenient, very easy to handle. They're more, shall we say, they're more probable for your character as a medieval person if you're doing reenactment than a longsword. They're not quite as Aragon-y looking as longswords, but these short single-handed swords from the medieval period are the most common sword from that period and would have been used in all sorts of the combats of the day, from being waylaid by travelers to being attacked in a formation in war to protecting yourselves in the street. All of these swords would have been a daily carry kind of sword in the medieval period. So, just a little description of some of the swords we have in the shop, and a little shout out to the single-handed sword lovers out there. Remember that not everything has to be a long sword, and not everything has to be a sword. We'll also make you a warhammer or an Italian bill or other stuff as well. So you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.